Hi, everybody. Before we get to another great interview, the Too Opinionated podcast could really use your help. And it's easy, it's free. IMDb, which is the entertainment database, imdb.com, named us a top 100 podcast. We came in at number 82. That's a big deal because there's 15 million podcasts and growing. So to be named to anybody's top 100 list, pretty big deal for us. And the way you can help is to go to imdb.com, look up the Too Opinionated podcast, and that's it. Just bringing our page up. That traffic really helps us out. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. All we ask is that you subscribe. It's also free, but that really helps us to attract these amazing guests that we keep bringing on the program. And that's it. Two easy ways for you to support us, and we would really appreciate the help. Now let's get to that interview. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Too Opinionated. I'm so excited today. I've got one half of the musical duo What, Grammy winner, musician, George Whitty. So welcome, George.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk with you. And my stepson, he's the musician of the family. So he's one of those, plays by ear. He can pick up an instrument and 20 minutes later he can play it, that type. So he knew all about who you were. He was super excited that I was talking with you today. So we've been listening to your music all weekend. It's wonderful with that. And I want to talk about the new stuff, but thought we would start this way. Talk a little bit about what got you started in music. Did you always start? Did you start on a piano or a keyboard, or were you playing other stuff and moved to that? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up in a little town on the coast of Oregon called Coos Bay. And my mom had a rule. I had five brothers and sisters that we were all going to do something like artistic between third grade and eighth grade. And if you didn't pick something else, you could do the ballet or you could study the flute or something. If you didn't pick anything else, it defaulted to the piano. And I was a bit of a reluctant piano student. I was going to a Catholic school at the time, and, the nuns were teaching me to play piano, and I had a like a good facility with it, but I wasn't that into it. And classical music never really grabbed me. But that's, what they all teach. So I did that, and then I moved to this other teacher, this really old lady named Norma Lyons, who was a great pianist, but she was missing four or five fingers.
Really?
Yeah, and she was just like, the hell with it. I'm just going to play the most important notes and keep going. But she was really fun and interesting. She would have my sister and me, grab a tambourine or some maracas or something like that and jam with her. Um, and by the time I got to eighth grade, I played classical music quite well, but I still just wasn't really loving it.
Right.
And then I think in my eighth grade year, these other kids formed like a garage band. And this just seemed so glamorous to me. These kids, and the kid who was playing piano stood up and he jammed and he played the piano. And I thought, man,
That's
I got to
great.
get me some of that. And then when I was like in a freshman in high school, something kind of possessed me and I got into jazz, and that was the end of it. And from there, I was determined to do that. That music really grabbed me. And one of my piano teachers started giving me, instead of giving me Chopin pieces, she would give me Dave Brubeck pieces. And those I was just fascinated with. Super hard to play because the written music for jazz, every note has a sharp or a flat in front of it, and lots of syncopation and stuff like that. But I loved the way it sounded, and they kind of just became my mission, you know. Then on to the Berklee School of Music in Boston. And I could afford 2 years there. And at that time, it was the cheapest private school in the country with a cafeteria that ranked 43rd out of 43.
Yeah, yikes.
Yeah. But again, the cheapest school in the country, definitely the cheapest school.
That's the age though. If you're in college, you kind of learn to live on nothing.
Well, I learned that I could live on potato chips and bananas. Often that was the only sort of edible thing in that cafeteria.
Oh,
Berkeley is now, when I was going, it was 5,200 a year, including the dorms.
yep.
It's now like 85,000.
Isn't that crazy?
My son is a music production student at USC, which is also no great,
Yep.
cheap school. But we didn't even consider sending him to Berkeley because, geez, that kind of money you get out of there, and what do you owe?
You
350K.
owe money forever.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And I think USC has a really good program
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah. Yeah, I know that's the type of things you weigh as a parent. The pros
absolutely.
and cons. And yeah, there's
Yeah.
a price point that it's just too much. And
Yeah. And the
85,000
return
definitely
on
pays.
investment, music business is going to be a pretty weird place here going forward. So
Yeah, it
is
really
your
is.
son thinking about pursuing music, or how old is he?
Well, he just turned 24. But
Okay.
he plays he's in a band and they play the local festivals, coffee shops, all of that.
Uh-huh.
He's the official, like our small town where we have our podcast studio. He's the official town musician. So anytime they need somebody, they call him and he'll accompany. If they do singing competitions around here and stuff, and he'll accompany who's singing
Right.
and stuff. So he's found his he's techie. So his day job, he's a tech and works for the state. But then his passion's with music, so he does that
Right.
on the side. So I'd say he's not making a living from it, but he's getting a lot out of it, if that makes sense.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those, his sister's pretty musical too. She just, once she left high school, she, kind of stopped with the music. But his dad, and his grandparents, they all get together and do those jam sessions and stuff.
Right.
I'm always so fascinated with that because I don't have that musical ability. So it's fun to kind of watch.
It's a very weird gene,
Isn't it?
and it's almost like you have these boobs running around 10,000 years ago who can't do anything but they can play the lute.
Yes,
So it's like they got to reproduce and here we are.
that's probably true.
Yeah. And I can't even play the lute.
Oh shoot. A lute seems like it'd be tough to play.
I think they're super hard to play, and I think they're super hard to keep them in tune.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they'd have to be.
But if the king says play the lute,
You play the lute.
you play the lute. He probably doesn't know the difference, is the other thing.
Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably exactly right. So
Yeah.
when you were growing up, what was the big break? What after you got out of school, what kind of got you into the music business?
Well, the first lucky break was when I got to Berkeley and saw how great the other students played.
Oh, right. Yeah.
These people, the first
Eye opener.
student recital I ever saw was Branford Marsalis,
Really?
who was already just terrifying when he was 18. And a month later, he was off and he was playing with Herbie Hancock. But that was really good for me because it scared the crap out of me and really got me to apply myself. But then I did a whole lot of kind of crazy stuff. Um, I was working in top 40 bands on Long Island.
Yeah.
I wish I had a picture of me in my spandex from back then.
Did you have long hair back then?
Yeah, I did. I actually had the mullet and mustache, like the standard top 40 keyboard player.
Yep.
you
That's
know,
like every keyboardist in the 80s.
what's that?
I said that's like every keyboardist in the 80s had that hairdo.
Yeah, and for me, I just didn't care. I didn't style my hair. I tried to spend as little on haircuts as I could. But I was living in Brooklyn at this time, and I would drive out, east on the Long Island Expressway, which was always just a parking lot.
Yeah.
Do those gigs, and then my car failed for the last time. I had this fuel injected Volkswagen Squareback, the worst car ever made, and I abandoned it on the LIE. And then I couldn't get to gigs. So I went down and started working on cruise ships.
Oh, really?
And that was interesting. I did that for a couple years. Um, and then a friend of mine who I had met in New York called me while I was down in Florida and said, Matt Guitar Murphy needs a keyboard player. And you want to do it? And I said, yeah, I absolutely want to do it. And so Matt was coming down to Florida. His guy got off. I got on geez, where was it? It was somewhere east of Miami, and played that first night down there, and we drove overnight to Houston and played the next night. So it's like 20 hours of driving or something like
I
that.
know you had to be exhausted by the time you got there to play.
There was a lot of that in that band, but it was a really good band. Everybody in it was great. Matt was amazing, and he started playing with Howlin' Wolf in like
Oh,
1942.
wow.
So, like, there's a guy who, like, serious heavy duty road warrior. It's super rare to do a touring band that goes out for 4 or 5 months at a time like that.
Right.
And we drove and drove and drove. We drove through 47 of the 48 states. We flew to Alaska.
I
We
mean, that
didn't
sounds
do
exhausting.
Hawaii, and somehow we missed New Mexico or something like Utah, I think we missed. But everywhere else, and we drove the whole thing.
I mean, that's kind of cool. Looking back, I'm sure you have good
Oh,
memories of
it,
that.
it, it was really great, and I kind of loved it right from the start.
Yeah.
There was a lot of overnight driving, and he had this green Cadillac, and I drove the van because I was the only person I trusted to not fall asleep. And, at 4 o'clock in the morning, Matt would be driving the caddy and he'd start to drive off the road, and I'd lay on the horn and Matt would jerk it back on. And 10 minutes later, he's starting to go off again. And that's how we did it. Stayed at a
Amazing.
lot of econo lodges, and I was rooming with the bass player, a good friend of mine named Eric Udell. And we just developed a policy that as soon as we got to the hotel, we would strip the bed, hang all the sheets and blankets off the deck railing outside because they were always kind of weirdly moist.
Oh,
Yeah. But
that's
it's
not
like,
fun.
okay, they're moist. We'll just get them to dry out. You just don't think about it that
You're
much.
hoping that it's some type of cleaning that they're doing.
I'm hoping it's just water.
Yeah.
May I quote Michael Jackson, the funk of 40,000 years. But we were making $310 a week was kind of the average, but lots of great gigs, lots of great experiences. We played everywhere from concert halls in Ontario to a stripper bar in Edmonton to the Colorado Bongathon.
Oh, very nice.
Way up in the woods, it was this contest to see who could smoke a quarter ounce of weed the fastest. But they had they hired a great stage and sound system, and everybody up there is just high out of their mind. And they had a dirt road leading up to the site, and after everybody got up, including us, they had a tanker truck that sprayed it down so that it was just mud, and the police couldn't get up there. But then you couldn't leave till the next day because you couldn't go down it
Right.
either. Yeah.
You're just stuck up there.
Yeah, we did one little tour of Europe, and right from the very minute I landed there, I just loved that.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, and they're pretty receptive over there to American
Very
music.
much so. 80% of the touring I do is Europe.
Oh, it's terrific.
Lots and lots of venues.
What's your favorite place in Europe?
Paris.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an easy one, I think.
Yeah, it's funny. I was having a discussion with my son Ryan, who a very avid traveler. We've taken him to Europe once, and he loves to travel in the States. We were talking about our favorite cities in the world,
Yeah.
and I think my top five are over there, probably.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
there's so much history over there. I mean,
And
we're
it's
so
so
new here.
concentrated. You
Yeah.
you could get on a train and be, in Spain one minute and in
Yeah.
Belgium the next minute and France the next minute and get to Italy and rent a car. My girlfriend and I rented a little Fiat convertible and drove the coast of Portugal last summer.
Oh, very nice.
It was actually summer of 23. Just amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, my wife's she works for Live Nation. She's getting ready to go to Portugal.
Oh, it's the best. Tell
Yeah,
her
that's
to,
her.
to
That'll be
be
her first time out there.
Be sure to get to Porto.
Okay, I'll tell her.
Lisbon is great too, but Porto, what a great saturated European river city.
Oh, I have to tell her that.
Yeah, every block is just stuffed with great stuff, great restaurants, great shopping, great galleries, museums.
Yeah, that's what I told her. I was like, you're probably going to need to add a day or two so you can sightsee.
Yeah,
While you're
and
working.
any church,
Yeah,
especially if you make it to Italy, but in Portugal too. It's amazing what they did. Even in these little bitty towns, it's like they must have saved for 50 years to get the gold leaf and all this stuff. They're just beautiful.
yeah, yeah. I'll tell her that because she'll have a blast. She loves doing the sightseeing stuff.
Yeah.
So I think she'll enjoy that. Well,
Yep.
you eventually got to work with Herbie yourself.
Yes.
How did that come about?
That I got with the Brecker Brothers in 1992,
Yeah,
and legends on the horns, and they had a really popular band in the 70s. It's called the Brecker Brothers.
yeah,
And Randy likes to tell this story where they were supposed to be the next big thing on was it Elektra, whatever record label they were on.
yeah.
So they did a tour with Average White Band, and Average White Band was kind of unknowns, but they were really good. And so a week into the tour, Pick Up the Pieces came out, and Randy said by the end of the tour they were opening for Average White Band. But so they decided to reform in 1992.
Yeah,
I got a call. I had been working with Randy's wife, who's this incredible pianist named Ileana Elias. I'd been in her band a little bit playing the production, and she had a feeling that I would be good at helping Randy shape up his demos into, better produced
yeah.
songs. So she turned me on to them. They got me in the live band. When I moved out to LA, Michael, who had been playing with Herbie for 20 or 30 years at that point,
Yeah.
told Herbie about me, and I started working with Herbie in a technical capacity. Mike told him that I was the guy to call if you wanted to be making, getting your sounds and stuff out of a computer. And back then that was a little unusual.
Right.
Now it's common, it's the way
Right.
I do everything. But we did a lot of work like that. And then just out of the blue one night, Herbie says, and I don't know where he even got the idea that I would be any good at this. He says, I want to hear some of your music that's not jazz. And this was at like 11:30 p.m. because Herbie starts like he really sits down to work at 9:30 or 10 p.m. He total night owl.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if he has to do it, he works during the day, but I think he feels all his other stuff that he's dealing with is done. I used to be like that when I lived in New York City.
When do you sleep though?
You get to bed at 4 a.m. and you kind of sleep till 10 or something, I'm betting. But so I had a page of a ton of film and TV work that I had done.
Yeah.
I've written like a couple hundred cues for various TV shows and one really bad movie. And that's all I'm going to say about
You're not going
that.
to tell us the name?
Well, I'll tell you what one of the reviews says.
Okay.
It says it's like a porn movie without the sex. And that's one of the kinder ones. Weirdly enough, it got picked up and it played on Showtime, and I made like $15,000 from it. But so Herbie sat there and he just listened straight through to these things for like an hour and a half. And he says, I think I have a gig for you. And what it was that he and Wayne Shorter had done all these great duo concerts in South America and a couple in Japan.
Yeah.
Really mind-boggling. The telepathy is off the hook. And he said, what do you think about taking these and writing an orchestra piece under what we did?
Yeah.
And I said, oh, hell yes. Absolutely give me that opportunity. So I did, and that's how I started writing orchestra arrangements for Herbie. I
Amazing.
do a really, really good virtual orchestra, and I have a good imagination. So I would take things that Herbie needed done and I could whack up a demo of it that really sounded like a great orchestra playing a really nice piece of music. So I ended up probably arranging 7 or 8 pieces for him and the LA Philharmonic.
Oh, really?
Oh, and there's nothing like he sitting in the hall and hearing your music played by one of the couple great orchestras in the world with
Wow.
that conductor and Herbie Hancock improvising on it.
I
And
mean, to me, that would, it seemed like a similar feeling like back in the 50s when you walked in a store and they were playing one of your songs on the radio, something like that.
right,
Yeah, that's
right.
cool.
It's interesting too because a lot of Herbie's music, it has to groove, even the orchestra things. And the first time that we played one of Herbie's arrangements live, the percussion section in the orchestra was trying to follow the conductor, and she's going like this, and you can't tell where the beat is. And the thing like pretty much completely fell apart. And for me sitting in the audience, it was like watching the Hindenburg crash for 9 minutes or however long the piece was. And I was like, oh my God. And then the next night, I couldn't be at that one, but Herbie said that the Portland Symphony really rocked it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
So it's high stakes though. There's 90 people involved. It costs a fortune to even run the tune one time. So if the writing is kind of ambitious, and mine wasn't that ambitious, I played it a little conservative because I wasn't sure if they could play this or that.
Right.
But they're going to run it once and they're going to play it on the gig. And
Wow.
the LA
So
Phil was
fast.
always just completely. I mean, there was one point I remember that one of their percussionists, and Dudamel is as great a groove conductor as you ever could have.
Yeah.
But the time started to get a little weird, and one of the percussionists just had the good sense to pick up a cowbell and bang out some time for 45 seconds. So super fun, super,
It
rewarding.
sounds chaotic.
What's that?
It sounds chaotic a little bit.
If it's chaotic, I think it's my fault because I wrote stuff like, you can't write syncopated stuff where the trombones, which are way over there, and the violins, which are way over here, it's like they're 100 feet apart. They can't hear each other. Um, so you learn as you go.
Yeah, yeah, I would think there'd be a learning curve with that because there's just so many musicians on the stage at one time.
Yeah, and you're kind of trying to do something it's Herbie's, a lot of it was music that Herbie had written that had a funk beat on it.
Yeah.
And you want to turn it into something that has like the power of like a film cue, like an action cue. You want the
Yes.
orchestra to rock. Um,
Well, there's
and
nothing more fun than seeing a whole orchestra rocking. It's
especially when it's music that you wrote.
yeah, amazing.
But when you first bring it in there, and the more of these I did, because I had done a lot of orchestra writing, but always for virtual stuff.
Right.
And there, if it's not balanced, well, you turn it up. If the can't hear the viola line, you turn it up. You can't do that there. You have to write it in such a way that it gets balanced the way you hear it when they play it live.
Yeah, it sounds hard.
A good conductor, though, can look at your thing and it's like, okay, that I'm going to get the strings to come up there. That's what all this business is about. And make adjustments on the fly, and they don't come better than Gustavo Dudamel. So
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Was
yeah,
were your Grammys? Did they come from the work with Santana?
what was that?
It
No, I don't credit myself with that. I think it won Grammys. All I did on that was play on it.
right. So
And
what
that was
were
an
the
interesting
Grammys?
gig. The drummer in Santana's band, Rodney Holmes, had
Yeah.
been the drummer in the Brecker Brothers the last couple of years I did it. Carlos was in town. They were at Electric Lady Studios with Dave Matthews. And I get this call from Rodney saying, hey, Carlos needs a piano player for this date today. You want to do it? And of course I want to do it. What do you mean, do I want to do it? So I get down there, and it was totally half baked. They didn't really know what they were going to do. Carlos had the melody and a little bit of the harmony. It was based on a classical piece. I forget what. There was no words. So Dave Matthews and Carlos are in the lounge, and he's scatting and kind of scat singing a little bit, and Carlos is figuring out. And we went out there with a very, very, very rough sketch, but it was such a great band that
Right.
right from the first take, it really sounded great.
Yeah, I
And
think
then
that's
we did
rare,
two
right? For the
tunes
first take to sound good.
with that level of musician. And these guys had been working with Carlos for years, great bass player, great percussionists. And of course, Carlos is there. We recorded two tunes and they didn't release the other one, but the other one was a really cool piece of music. So I hope at some point, Carlos Santana, the unreleased sessions comes
Oh,
out
you
or
know
something.
it'll come out at some point.
At some point, I don't even remember how it went, but I remember thinking, wow, we really killed that one. So that was just a playing gig, though. The ones that won me the Grammys, the first two Brecker Brothers records,
Yeah.
that I was credited as a producer on, those each won a Grammy. And then after they split up, that was supposed to be one record and one tour, but they were having so much fun with it that they decided to keep going, and it turned into two records and 4 years of touring.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, I continued working both for Mike and Randy as solo artists.
Yeah.
I had produced some tracks for Chaka Khan
Right. Yeah.
in like 1991, and that record won a Grammy, The Woman I Am.
Oh, I remember that record. Yeah. That was a good record.
Yeah, it was a good record, and that was my first experience in the big leagues. And she is the big leagues, boy.
Did you get to go up on stage?
No, I never played live with her,
Yeah.
but this was back, when Chaka was a little bit in party mode.
Right.
But she was the Iron Lady, and when it came time to record, I guess Ellis would be one of only a couple people I've worked with that were that good.
Yeah.
It took her a minute to warm up because wherever she'd been the night before, there was still a little bit of that going on. But once she warmed up, I still remember we were in the studio and she's just kind of doing a little bit of exercises and humming to herself and whatever. And she's on the microphone. And the engineer says, okay, give us something at full level. And she belts out this note and just damn near broke every window in lower Manhattan. So much power, but so much finesse.
Yeah.
And she she got the lead down in a couple passes, and then she starts doing the backgrounds. And she knows exactly what she's going to do. And she does not need to go over to the piano and dink out notes, none of that. And each pass, I think we did them all first takes.
Wow.
Super rare
She's like a
singer.
pro.
Yeah, and it's like, remember how they used to say that who was it? One of those Dallas Cowboys defensive linemen was studying the ballet.
Oh, I remember that. Was
That's
that Too Tall Jones, maybe?
I forget,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe, but that's what she's like because she has all the power in the world, and yet she has so much finesse.
Wow.
And her favorite thing to sing, as I understand it, is Joni Mitchell songs.
Oh, really?
She sings a Joni tune in most of her concerts, and she just loves the way that the words work with the melody. Serious artist, the words have to mean something to her, or she's just not down.
I kind of like that. It's personal.
Yeah, and just a brilliant jazz singer,
Yeah. Oh, she's
really.
amazing. Growing up, we listened to a lot of Chaka Khan through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and she's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, she's unbelievable, and she could cross genres.
Oh,
She could do some
absolutely.
disco, some jazz, some Motown, whatever you want.
And our rock tunes,
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
on that
yeah, definitely
Steve
rock.
Winwood record. And just a super interesting, thoughtful person as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's terrific. That's terrific. So you mentioned Ellis, so Ellis Hall, that's your new venture. So talk about what a little bit. What I love the name because it's I kept seeing it and I was like, wonder what that is. And then when I thought about it, I was like, oh, okay, okay. But I'll
That's
let
the
you tell
idea. And we
what it
pronounce
is.
it what? Ellis insisted that we have no fewer than four exclamation points on
Love
it.
that.
And we just got news yesterday that our first single, which is called Die Living,
Yeah.
has cracked the top 200 radio play chart.
Oh, it's a terrific song. We listened to that all weekend. It's
We are
catchy.
right at number 200, but this is the chart, it's got Bruno Mars and
Right,
Lady
right. It's a
Gaga
big
and Taylor
deal.
Swift and
Yep.
Elton John and, Shabuzi and all these people. And there we are, our little independent, I call it the little single that could. I have to give a shout out to our radio guy, Ray Hale, who has done a
Yeah.
tremendous job getting our stuff out there. But that's further than I ever thought we would get. I
Yeah,
hope
yeah.
I hoped we would
Congratulations.
place high on the R&B charts and
Right.
so forth. It also got picked up on Spotify. And we've got like 25,000 spins on radio, and the whole record doesn't come out now till February 14th.
Oh, okay. So you moved it back a little bit.
We did because it's difficult to get streaming going. We're
Right.
on all the streamers. Look for us, what, with four exclamation points. And if everyone in your audience could stream the record of 2 million times, I think we would make about $1.50.
I know it's disappointing how little you make.
Well, but it's also just a real nut to crack getting on there.
Yeah.
But our distributor, which is the Orchard, which is owned by Sony, they can give us a push getting on playlists and stuff like that, but they need it a month in advance. And we didn't find out about this until Monday, and it was due to be released on Friday, but we
Right.
really want that push.
Well, you need that push. Yeah.
Because streaming success, it's hard to do, but if you get 1 million plays on Spotify, you clear about 3,300 bucks.
Yeah.
And we'd like to make sure that avenue is funded as well as it can. So we did push it back a little.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense. So it's coming out on Valentine's Day now.
That is exactly right. And there is no better gift, you know, uh, prop up the short leg of the couch. I think 12 of them takes up an inch. It's a great couch prop. I'm trying to sell any possible way
Hey,
I can.
the music on it is terrific. I mean,
It's really great.
really good.
And, Ellis and I did the whole thing in a state of high inspiration. I knew I was working with this guy who blew me out of my seat when I first saw him in 1988, which was with Tower of Power.
Yeah.
And I saw every gig they did in New York. They always played at this great club called The Bottom Line. But I went in there for this one, and it's like, oh, they've got a new singer. What's this going to be? And it was Ellis just crushing it on the singing and the playing. And I always tell Ellis, I said to myself, sitting out there in the audience, Jeepers, I'm going to work with that man one day. He's my hero. But somehow we never intersected. I got called to work with Tower Power in 2003, but it was a month before my son was due to be born.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to turn it down. And Ellis was gone by that point too, but we kind of mutual admiration for society for a while. And when Alec Burfield, our brilliant manager, proposed that we do this record, and David Ford, who's our executive producer and guitarist, he's on the live cuts that we did and a couple of the studio cuts, got on board with it too. I was like, I am absolutely in, but this has to be my best work. So we started out doing that tune for Ukraine, which is a remake of a popular Ukrainian rock song.
That's the Hug Me, right?
Yeah, and their lyric translates roughly to kind of hug me. So Ellis wrote lyrics, and I wanted to make like a big cinematic thing with a lot of drama in it because I had an idea that the video was going to be like it is with a lot of images from poor destroyed Ukraine in it, and the resolve of the Ukrainians and so forth. So I made sure that I really did like kind of a butt-kicking good demo.
Well, yeah, you nailed
Sent
it.
that to Ellis, and he got all inspired. He starts sending me vocals, and I'm like, I cannot believe what this sounds like, because Ellis just sends you the lead vocal, and he does all the background vocals, and the arrangements are so beautiful and sophisticated, and that voice,
His
Ellis
voice is amazing.
every singer says, I got a 5-octave range. But Ellis has it, and you hear from the very bottom to the very top on a lot of these tunes. So then I would go, oh my God, this is going to be a masterpiece. And I'd dig in and put more cool harmony in it, and better groove, and take a crazy solo. And all the tunes we did were like that. Usually I would get get an idea going, send it to him. He would amplify it several levels of magnitude and send it back. So it was quite, inspired and super fun all the way through.
I mean, that's if you're going to do an album, isn't that how you want it? You want to work
with
somebody that you just love to work with?
Absolutely. And I've produced a lot of other stuff, and I've been super lucky to usually work with great musicians, and if they weren't friends at the beginning, they become great friends by the end.
Yeah.
And if, I always feel like it's partly the producer's responsibility to figure out how to make this like a fun, rocking, energized experience. And when I first started working with the great musicians in the world, which was on those Brecker Brothers records, I hadn't figured out how to do that yet. And I remember we were working with Will Lee, who had played bass in the original Brecker Brothers.
Yep.
And we were working on this tune, and like I was being way too fussy, and I was. And Will eventually says, I think I have to tell you, you're staring at this too hard. But there's an art to getting, especially with difficult music, which a lot of that was, getting it where it's going to turn out and it's going to kind of get executed the right way, even if it's difficult, but everybody gets to feel like they get to have a romp. And that's what I've arrived at, So everything I do pretty much it feels like we all had a romp together,
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that sounds fun. It's like if the album
it's not fun, you failed.
Yeah, well, right. And I kind of look at it as if the album doesn't do well, that's disappointing. But if you had a great time making it, it's not a disaster.
Well, and often in the jazz world, especially, you make a lot of stuff and it's out there on a wing and a prayer. But these days, especially, it's going to be rare. It's going to be difficult for it to even recoup its investment.
Yeah, of course.
Back in the day, we all used to go on tour at a loss to help sell records at eventually a profit. That's gotten spun on its head to it where it's now you make a record at a loss and you hope to make money on the gigs.
Right.
Live bodies with talent is going to be the last thing that AI eventually takes from us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that'll happen too. Hopefully it's way down the road, but at some point it'll happen.
You would go see some automaton George Whitty. These are my best licks. Please enjoy. I
That takes some getting used to.
honestly, I wonder if what's going to happen is that as our cultural universe gets more infected with AI content, they're going to start scoring movies with it. Your accountant is going to be an AI bot and all this stuff. If the experience of seeing people make art that they pull out of thin air on a stage, if that doesn't become more valuable,
Right.
but then if you take that to its logical extent, I always think about gigs in Germany when I talk about that.
Yeah.
Germany is a great audience, and it scales from little 6-year-old girls to 95-year-old men come to your jazz fusion gig. And they're a super just knowledgeable, like receptive audience.
Yeah.
Um, and I always wonder, I think that's the kind of audience that might want to come see us more as things get cheapened with AI, but I just hope they all have a job so they can afford it, you know?
Yeah, I know that the whole AI thing, especially in the entertainment music world, is a little scary. A little scary.
I got a project to work on by this very good singer named Alan Brock. And he just, in order to get something down on tape, he used an AI bass player, and I think AI drums, and maybe even some AI piano. And I was, he wanted me and a great drummer and a bass player to replace it all. So it wasn't like that. But I put it on and I was like, oh boy, here we go. This is the
Yep.
future. And fortunately, all the AI players were terrible. We're still a little ways away from getting
You got a little ways
replaced.
yet.
Well, and to me, that's a good use of AI. Use it to flesh out your thoughts.
Right.
But especially in the jazz world, I always equate it, nobody wants to watch a robot dunk a basketball.
No, that's right.
What's the fun in that? And
Yeah.
nobody wants to watch a robot play a great saxophone solo. It's interesting,
Right.
but you're not going to listen to it and try to get an artistic reward out of
No,
that.
it doesn't have any soul. It doesn't.
Yeah, and it
You're
never
definitely
will.
missing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to mention you redid "I Thank You," and
Yes.
that song sounds amazing. I love that one.
Yeah, that one came to me. I was actually walking down a pier in San Francisco one day, and we had a few tunes worked up on this record, and someone had a beatbox on the next pier over. So it was like 100 yards away or whatever it was. And all I could hear was like the basics of the groove, but I really liked it. And for some weird reason, that tune popped in my head. So I booted up my phone and made a voice memo of the beat and the idea to do I Thank You, which is, I hadn't thought about I Thank You in 20 years.
Right. It's just a
And
great song.
so we remade it quite substantially, but tried to keep, because those guys, that's just a great R&B tune. I
Right.
saw that Sam Moore passed away, or was it Dave? I think it was Sam Moore passed away
He
just a few
did.
days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we tried to honor the spirit of the song. Ellis had this idea that when we record it, that he would be Sam and I would be Dave, or vice versa. So he wanted me to sing on it. And I haven't done a lot of recorded singing. Um, and it
Well,
was
you did a good job with it.
yeah, it's right at the very top of my register, though. So some of those high notes, if I wasn't really yelling,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh yeah.
I wasn't going to hit them at
You weren't going
all.
to hit them. Yeah. Did you
Yeah,
get to
and
share it
it's
with
okay. I mean, there's a long history of guys yelling out a blues tune. So
did you get to share it with Sam before he passed?
no, we didn't.
Oh.
We didn't even think about that. And the record comes out. It would have been great to send it to him just
Yeah.
to so he could get a laugh out of it. Because we did we remade it fairly substantially. We added a lot of harmony into it.
Yeah, yeah.
You
I thought it was
know,
really good. It was catchy.
super fun band to play with, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Aaron
I imagine
Haggerty.
so.
Yeah, he plays with the Earth, Wind, and Fire experience and with Kool and the Gang and people like that. And
Yeah, I think I've seen him with Kool and the Gang. They came. Kool and the Gang was my first live concert. I was 12 years
oh,
old.
good for you.
I'll tell you, this is my Kool and the Gang story. It's kind of a Michael Jackson story, but here's the story. So the rumor leading up to the concert was that Kool and the Gang was bringing a surprise special guest. Nobody knew who it was. So you get to the concert and the curtains go down. So you think, okay, it's starting. We're going to find out who this special guest is. Well, they start playing Thriller, and the crowd just lost their minds. They just went insane. And
Right.
it plays for a few seconds. Everybody's losing their mind. The curtains come up. Nobody's there. Lights come back on. And about 20 minutes later, Kool and the Gang came out and said, yeah, that was just a joke. There, I was like, if you played that on the wrong people, that wouldn't go very well.
Right. Yeah. That's funny that they did that kind of a little tribute thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
so I got to see them then back early 80s, and then they came back through a few years back, and I'm pretty sure he was with them
Mhm.
at that time. So yeah, that's pretty interesting that you happened to do that song, and then he's in the news now.
Right. So I guess his estate will make a little money off that if we can get it played.
No, that's terrific. So the album, let me find it here, is In the World, and is it a dual album?
Well, it's a duo record, but it's a
Oh, a
single CD.
duo. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so In the World comes out now February the 14th, so on Valentine's.
Well, now I'm getting texts that say that they're not sure they can turn the date around. So it's either this
Oh, okay.
Friday or it's February 14th.
Well, that's kind of exciting. Yeah.
Best thing to do if you want to hear it is subscribe to us on Spotify or Apple Music.
Yeah, that's what
You
I did.
can, definitely join our Instagram where all the news will be, which is Whitty Hall Artist Team, WHITTY Hall Artist Team, which is where what comes from. We're on Facebook also, same idea. And if you go to whittyhall.com, that's our website.
Yeah, and the website's really good. It's easy to navigate.
Yeah.
It gives you all the links that you would want to get to Spotify.
Yeah, and all the news will be on there too.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, website. Everybody thinks the hard part is just setting it up. It's not. It's maintaining it. That's the
Exactly. I do my own so that if something happens, I don't have to call somebody and say,
Fix
I
this.
get in and edit myself, but then I never do. So it's way out of date.
Yeah, I know. That's it. We have our website, and that's probably the task that my son and I keep passing back and forth because neither one of us wants to do it.
Right.
But it's so important.
Right. It's important. And these days they've made it a lot easier. I used to have to get in there and type, href
Yeah,
dot.
you had to do code to get it done.
Exactly. That was the Wild West.
Yeah, it's better. It's not even I have went in and made some adjustments, and I'm
Right.
pretty technically challenged. So
Yeah.
well, George, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time. The new music sounds incredible.
Thank you. We're very proud of it.
Well, you should be. It's so good. It's got like it's got it reminded me of a lot of different decades, if that makes sense.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know how exactly to articulate that, but I got a little vibe of several different decades, and I don't know.
Yeah, we think of it as a soul record.
Oh, I like that.
Which means that it kind of should span everything from the late 50s to 2025.
Yeah, and I think it does. And like I said, I don't know how to articulate that other than just saying, I kind of picked up on that, but I'm not sure what you did to make me pick up on that.
Yeah. It's Ellis and I have been around the block.
Yeah.
Ellis started listening in the 60s. And
Wow.
yeah, we both admire the same figures, the most sophisticated R&B soul singers and writers and so forth. So
yeah, well, it shows. Yeah, and
we try to honor the great harmony that everybody's written and the good grooves, and you can't get a better singer than Ellis Hall. So
I agree with that. I
yeah.
had it'd been a while since I listened to him sing, and we spent the weekend kind of listening to music. Oh my gosh, what a voice!
Mm-hmm.
Just incredible. Yeah, it was.
Thank you for the streams.
Yeah.
Keep listening.
I'll try to get a few million more out there.
Listen till you're sick of it, and then another couple years, and you can be done with it.
I do the same thing with everybody in the family. I'm like, I don't care if you're actually watching, but pull this podcast up and just have it playing.
Yeah, good.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Please, next time you have something getting ready to come out, come back and tell us about it.
We absolutely will, and I'll bring Ellis with me.
Yeah, I'd love that. That'd be fun.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's been great. Okay, hold on just a second, sir. The legendary George Whitty, Grammy-winning George Whitty, and we talked a lot about Ellis Hall. I was hoping maybe he might pop in, but maybe next time. Maybe we'll get Ellis on next time. Do yourself a favor and find what it is worth your time. The music is so good. I mean, it musically, and I'm not a musician, so I rely more on family to tell me. Yeah, I can tell you if I like it or not. I rely more on the musicians and the family to tell me if it's well done, and they love the work on the new album. It's so good, and Ellis's voice is just I don't even know how to describe it. He hits every note. He hits notes I didn't think you could hit, but he does it. So absolutely terrific. Let me say this: the album's in the world. It's out either on the 17th of January or the 14th of February, and George explained why. So we're waiting to see when we release. We'll let you know when the music. We'll either let you know it's out or that it's coming out on the 14th. So we'll let you know that shortly. If you're finding us for the first time, thrilled that you're here. Thank you so much. Would love to have your support. It's easy to do. It's free. Our website, meistercon.com. We were talking about it there a few minutes ago. You can find out if we're doing anything in studio, if we're covering a convention, going on location. And you can also get almost 900 episodes, audio and video versions. We've been doing this podcast for 6 years, my son and I, and we're pretty prolific. We tend to put out about 4 episodes a week, and that adds up over time. So we're getting ready to hit our 900th episode. It's pretty exciting. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. If you go there, please subscribe. It's free. Really helps us out. Helps us to keep bringing these terrific actors, musicians, writers, authors, all that in. So YouTube, MeisterCon Pod. Please subscribe. Thank you guys so much. Till next time. Bye, everybody.